Hi, this is G from Native Speakers Academy, and welcome to our short presentation, Why Homeschool. Now, I would like to start by relaying to you something which happened to me the other day. I was working with some students here in Slovakia, where I live, and I was helping them prepare for their state school leaving exams, the exams they take before they go to university. And one of the things that they have to learn here is about the education systems of those leading luminary lights in the education world. Those countries that theoretically provide the highest standards and best qualities of education. Great Britain and the United States. Of course, this is not true. If you look at statistics, the world's best education system is in fact in Finland, which might surprise a few people. Also interesting about Finland is that Finland is the country where students have the least number of hours of study, the least number of hours in school, and the least number of hours of homework. So, statistically, the less time you spend within the state education system, the better your quality of education. And that's not my opinion. That's what the facts present. Another thing to note about Finland is that school is not compulsory. And the reason why I wanted to mention this little story at the beginning is that in the books that teach the students in Slovakia about British and American systems, both books state that school is compulsory for all students. Now, this is not true. This is just not true. What is compulsory in Great Britain is education, not school. And in the United States, there is yet to be an amendment to the Constitution which says that the government is responsible for your children's education. Of course, parents are responsible for their children's education. Now, if parents want to send their children to a state school, or have the money for a private school, or an alternative school, then great. Variety is the spice of life. These choices are extremely important. And it's nice to have real choices. But there are alternatives for those who are interested. And this is a little presentation on one of those alternatives. So why homeschool? There are three basic reasons why people homeschool. There are lots more, but let's have a look at the three basic reasons. First, we have concern about the school environment. What does this mean? This means that parents are worried that the school might A, not be safe, and by not being safe, what I mean is that the students might be subject to bullying, or that We have seen recent cases in the news of shootings in schools, although these are hyped up events which happen very rarely. Um, they are things that we need to be concerned about. They might also be concerned about the style of education. They might be concerned, and this is one of these geographical problems where children tend to go to school near where they live, and this really limits possibilities. Imagine you can only buy products next to where you live, that you couldn't travel to buy products. You can go to the nearest town or another city. I mean, compare that with the opportunities we have now on the internet to purchase goods, where there are websites that aggregate prices, and all you have to do is make a few little clicks. You can find the best price, the best supplier, the best system for delivery, and you can order your product and it can be delivered to your door. Why do we not perceive that education can also be done this way? Perhaps it's because it's a state system and the state wish to retain control of the children. Perhaps there's another reason. Anyway, concern about the school environment is an issue for some parents who study that information. Most parents don't. They just take a look at the local schools. They decide which one they think is the best, and they send their children there. If they have a choice, some just send them automatically to the nearest school. Is that wise? I guess it's individual choice. The second of the top 3 reasons for homeschool is to provide religious or moral instruction. So you might belong to a religious group with a specific set of beliefs, and you might not want your children to be taught in a system of values which is different from your values in your family. So, there are Muslim schools for Muslim kids, Christian schools for Christian kids, and so on. And I think that's quite understandable. Do religious schools provide moral instruction? I guess they have their own set of rules, which I guess they would define as morals, whereas the state schools would be a more ethical system. And it's important to understand the difference between ethics and morals. Ethics are those habits which are situational and cultural and are subject to change as society itself changes and develops or progresses or even regresses. And morals are those elements of truth that do not change over time. For example, it was wrong, it is wrong, and it will always be wrong. Consider thou shalt not kill, for example. So we have schools that perhaps don't provide the right type of religious environment, and so parents choose to educate children with their values themselves at home. The third of the top reasons for homeschooling is dissatisfaction with instruction available at other schools. So the parents are unhappy with the teachers, maybe the school has a bad reputation, the parents are unhappy with the administration, the parents are unhappy with the results and standards. Now that we have league tables to compare the competing schools, like education is a competition, parents have a little bit more information about the education that they can expect within certain schools. And with a lot of negative publicity coming out of bad environments in schools, children being bullied or attacked, with students not being able to choose their teachers and parents not being able to choose the teachers for their students, it's understandable that some parents who are very keen that their children develop to the highest potential possible decide that that they'd like to try it themselves. And now with a huge range of resources available from the internet and through the exchange of information on the internet, we can see that students at home don't have some of the problems that maybe they had in the past. Like, it's not a problem now to find resources. It's not a problem to find materials. It's not a problem to find special courses. And there are a lot of specific organizations that are set up and designed to provide these data, to provide these curriculums, and to provide these courses. You can readily buy them and order them online. So these are the top 3 reasons for homeschool. You might have been also homeschooled yourself, and you might have enjoyed it, and you might want to present this opportunity to your children as well. That might be another reason for homeschooling. You might not be able to get to school. You might live in a very remote area where traveling is not possible, and so you might wish to take charge of your own education. And there are even MOOC courses available online. That's MOOC, Massive Open Online Courses, which the top universities in the world present online for free for students. So there are a huge range of possibilities there. Now there are other reasons, but those are the 3 main ones. So let's look at the methods that can be used for homeschooling. What have we got? We have 5 types of traditional method. We have the computer-based course, which uses CDs, DVDs, or the internet to teach courses. And with a huge range of teachers and resources available, why not? It might not be as interactive as a classroom setting, but you still get all the data and all the information, and you can basically arrange your own study around your own personal needs as well. Now there's this misconception with homeschooling that because it's homeschooling, it means being schooled at home, which is not the case, because what it means is you don't have to be in school. So it should really be called not in school schooling, because you are not limited to staying at home and being at home. You have the possibility and opportunity to travel when you want, to meet people when you want, and to explore things when you want, which is a wonderful responsibility, I think, that young people can take on. So there's the computer-based course. There's independent study, where parents are not there to teach, but to help the child through the process so he or she can learn on his own. So that's where you select subjects for study that the child themselves finds interesting, and there might be some self-directed learning within that environment. This also frees up the child to spend time on what they want to spend time on, I think the child will still need guidance, tutoring and mentoring in that situation, but this really respects the child's wishes and the child's needs, treating the child as an individual, not just part of a collective. Unschooling is the study that leads the way, is the student, excuse me, where the student leads the way in learning and sets the pace. So what this means is no specific curriculum. That doesn't mean that you don't go in depth on a lot of subjects and study a wide variety of topics. It means you go where your innate abilities lead. Now there's a fear with this that students might miss out on extra education in the areas of language or mathematics or science. But this generally is not the case, as the classical state schooling methods usually have a schizophrenic timetable where you have 45 minutes here, 45 minutes there, switch off, switch on the brain, and you never really dive deep into the depths of any subject. And unschooling really gives you an opportunity to spend a longer period of time having a closer look at a specific subject. It also gives you the opportunity to study the world around about you as the world itself changes. It also requires a lot of energy and interaction from the family to make it work as well. Then we have textbook-based methods, which use the traditional classroom model with workbooks and textbooks to minimize the potential for major gaps in what the students are learning. So I think we're all aware of this. There's usually a main book or course of study with information followed by questions to check the students retain the information. Then there are usually unit tests or tests at the end of parts of the courses to check the students' understanding. I personally prefer a form of constant assessment rather than assessment at the end, but it's a personal choice. And there are usually workbooks to go along with the main course books, and homeschooling also means you can supplement with other materials. If you're aware of other things that exist, you can add them in. But it's nice sometimes to have a course book as a guide. You don't always have to follow it, but it's there. It's a nice foundation if you need it. And it also gives you the flexibility to choose the types of course books you like. Very often in the state system, those choices are made for you, and so you're not taking any responsibility for your education, which I think everybody needs to do. Then we have the classical method, which is based on the philosophy of education used in ancient Greece during the Middle Ages. I would say it's pre-Middle Ages. This is a rigorous style of education, and a lot of religious families choose this method because they are extremely interested in, maybe interest is not right the word, they're extremely dedicated to their lives, and the classical methods require an understanding of dedication. Usually this means looking at Greek methods such as the trivium, which is the exploration of grammar, logic and rhetoric as the foundation of all learning. It's also an attempt to achieve excellence as well. There is a second level in the classical system which moves from the trivium to the quadrivium, and I'm going to express just how ignorant I am right now by trying to remember off the cuff what the quadrivium contains, the quadrivium contains, I think, 4 additional subjects: music, arithmetic, geometry. I've got 3 of them, and astrology. I think those are the 4 subjects. Now, you would have to check that out. I'm sure they're contained within the curriculum there. The reason for studying them is that music has a lot of elements of social harmony to it. That's just one element. I mean, there are many more. The astrology is a kind of universal geography. And the geometry is all about a higher level of arithmetic related to building. And it's very interesting to look at the differences between arithmetic and mathematics as well. And there was one other. You can check it out. So there we go. Those are the methods. Now let's have a look at some interesting facts related to homeschooling. 74% of homeschooled children have gone to college, as opposed to 44% of the general population. So a higher percentage of children who are homeschooled go on to further education, specifically in colleges or universities. And these are the ones that maybe don't go directly into business or entrepreneurship, because homeschoolers tend to be very dedicated to their own business ideas. In fact, if you look at the top, let's say the top 100 to 500 functioning companies in the Western world, you will actually find a large number of people working at the top of them who were homeschooled, and a lot of companies are actually founded by people who have a very strong history in self-directed education. Note Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, once they had their business ideas set in stone, didn't need their university educations. It's also a little secret that universities, the top universities, often automatically select students who have been homeschooled because they know they're self-directed and highly motivated. These are places like Oxford, Cambridge, and Harvard. Homeschooled kids come from a variety of families and income levels, such as low income, middle income, high income, with families with PhDs and atheist non-believers. So homeschooling is not something which is orientated to one specific element or area of society. Some families with high income choose to have private tutors. That's a form of home education. Some families with middle income choose to spend a section of that income on educating their children, and dedicated low-income families can also do the same thing. One of the other little secrets is it's not expensive. It's not expensive to homeschool. Families with PhDs often have a good understanding of society, the world, and overall education, and wish to share that with their children. And atheists homeschool as much as religious groups as well. Homeschoolers have attended 900 different colleges and universities, including institutions with highly selective standards of admission. And this, I imagine, refers to statistics in North America. It's also very interesting to note that homeschooling is not legal in many countries. What does this mean? This means directly that parents can be put in prison if they wish to educate their own children. Now, do you understand the gravity of that? The gravitas. That the government can take you as a parent and put you in prison if you decide that you want to educate your own children. Riddle me this, Batman. How can government be good if it can do that? So that's also something to look at, the legalities of homeschooling. I think it's quite sad that government considers parents unable to educate their own children, especially when government doesn't know the kids. How can you make any blanket universal decision about all children when you don't actually know the children? It really defies all logic. But of course the system is not founded on logic, it's founded on force. $50,000 is the amount of money is the average household income of homeschooling families. Now, this might seem a lot. I mean, it depends which country you're in, it depends how much money you're making. But this shows you that you don't need a lot of money to homeschool. You really don't. The resources exist almost automatically within your environment. And you can also share your resources with other homeschooling families. And you also don't have to waste money. It's interesting if you pay taxes that your tax money is automatically spent on other people's children. Whereas if you homeschool, you make the conscious decision to say, I don't need other people's income. We can do this ourselves, and we can do it better as well. Now, it's a challenge, it's difficult, it's tough. Just have a look at any of the homeschooling websites or homeschooling blogs, and you'll find a lot of parents writing there, I'm stressed, I'm overworked, I'm not sure how to present this information to my children, can you give me some advice? So it's not an easy thing to do. It is a real challenge. But I think it's one of those joyful challenges, because being a parent is always a verb before it's a noun. It's to parent, it's to be active in that area. So we can also now look at some of the advantages of homeschooling that you can see here. So, advantages of homeschooling. These are the clear advantages. There are many little side benefits, but here are the clear advantages. Control of schedule. You can plan a curriculum that fits your needs, that fits your child's needs, that fits your child's interests. You can work it into your life. It means if you want to study something for longer, you can. If you want to study something for shorter, you can. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. So that's a nice element to understand. It also gives responsibility to the student and the parent. And giving the students more responsibility is never a bad thing to do, as long as you do it in a moderated, controlled way. More one-to-one attention, and this is the key element that most people seem to understand the fastest, that in a traditional school you've got one teacher, maybe 20 or 30 students. Look at the ratio of teacher to student, it's quite shocking. Whereas in a homeschooled environment you've got much more careful, detailed and planned education, where the student has direct access to the information and the tutor or tutors or parents. It's interesting, the dynamic for learning, because the state school system is basically designed as a horizontal learning environment. But all real learning can only be a vertical process. So you need to meet people who are older than you, with more experience than you in life in order to learn. So if you're stuck with your peers, you're pretty much trapped. So you need to have more contact with more adults in order to learn. And statistics show that if you go back in time 100, 150 years, that there was more adult-child interaction than child-child interaction. Usually the dynamic was that each young person was surrounded by 3 or 4 adults before state schooling became compulsory, and so from those adults the child was able to learn a lot of information. And also they grew up quicker because they were in an adult environment. Time can be spent on subjects that really interest the child. Yes, you don't have to read something you don't want to read, so you don't have to read that Shakespeare play if you want to read a science book. You don't have to read that historical novel if you want to do some physical training or some sports activity. So you can focus on the things that really interest you. And one of the secrets of education is that all subjects are connected. In fact, everything is connected to everything else, which I believe is a famous Leonardo da Vinci quote. You can't really separate subjects because life in the universe itself does not really separate things. All things exist together. You can also build a strong relationship with your child. You can also have problems as well because of that, because it's tough. Teaching is tough, learning is tough, education is tough. It requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of self-direction, a lot of mentorship. But if you get through that, then what you're building is a bond with your child, trust with your child, and more time with your children. Who could argue against that? Who would not want to spend more time with their own children, helping them develop? And as the child and children learn, so you learn. One of the things that's always confused me about education is that if parents feel that they're unable to teach their own children because they have insufficient skills, how logical is it to send your children back into the system that didn't educate you properly? Surely that's just perpetuating the cycle of ignorance, isn't it? Tailor teaching to fit your child's dominant learning style. Now, it's very interesting to understand that there are at least 9 basic styles of learning, and that all children are different. If you're teaching with one method, how can you possibly educate a group to the best of that group's ability? Well, the answer is you can't. So you need to understand in what way your child learns. Does your child learn through doing things better? Does your child learn through listening to someone? Does your child learn through watching people and then trying to copy them? There are a variety of learning styles that people need to look at, and they need to understand what's best for their own child. And this can be done through little experiments, or this can be done through exploration, conversation with the child. And it's often not visible at first, and child's skills develop very quickly. And it might be that the child has more than one style that fits to them. But you can definitely orientate the style of education to fit the needs of the individual child. And the child might learn to work well as an individual. Well, the child will not be so dependent on other people. The child will also not be comparing themselves to other people. So they will be able to progress at their own speed, in their own way. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with developing in an independent way, to learn at your own speed, with your own style. And we all learn at different speeds anyway, so trying to get everyone to be on the same page is not very practical, especially within state systems. So all of those are great advantages that we can pick up on in education. Now, Disadvantages, let's just look at a few of the negatives here. We've got a lack of socialization with other children, and children may not work as well as in a team setting. Now, when you know what the problem is, you can address it. So, how can you address socialization? Get your children outside, get them meeting other children, get them joining clubs, art clubs, sports clubs, clubs of personal interest, nature clubs. Be outside as much as possible, and you should be able to redress those problems. And these will be real socializations, not forced socializations. And that's the way the real world works. If you like someone, you spend time with them. If you don't like someone, you don't spend time with them. Being forced to spend time with people that you don't really like very much just forces you to believe that you have to spend your life putting up with idiots around about you. So that's definitely something homeschooling parents need to address. They need to get their kids into groups and into teams. This can be done with other homeschoolers or anyone that lives in the local environment. Start a club. Why not? Families may not have as many resources as the school, including books, gyms, science labs, and art studios. This is where we need to share resources, use what we can in our environment, borrow from friends, try to get help from family. It's true that school has more money to spend on things, but we can be more specific in our use of the resources we have if we homeschool. You can also try to form a partnership with a local school and maybe use some of their resources. After all, you're paying for it as a taxpayer. So we've also got spending 24 hours a day with your child can be difficult. Parents will need to make time for personal space. Well, I don't think you're going to be spending 24 hours a day with your child, but I get the point. The point is that it's really not easy. As much as you plan to be together, you got to plan to have your own personal space in every relationship. So if you're in charge of your own schedule, you need to schedule that. You need to put it into the plan. You need to discuss it. And discussing and building plans together can often avoid these problems. So, some extra information. National Reading Panel information says that according to the National Reading Panel, when children 4 to 7 years old start to learn reading skills, 40% will struggle. Now, this is telling us that it's not easy. It's not easy to develop that skill. But if we work methodically at the pace that the child needs, there's a higher probable percentage of success there. And if you work at the child's speed, it's clear that the child is not going to be left behind in this way. If you look at history, there are many famous people who didn't develop their skills until much later. Not all children develop speech at the same time. Not all children develop writing skills at the same time. Not all children develop reading skills at the same time. Not all children develop communication skills at the same time. And this is borne out later in life when you find that a lot of writers don't actually start writing until after they're 40 because they don't have the experience to talk about yet. So when you know where the possible pitfalls of the system is in advance, you can prepare to avoid them. And Study Dog is a reading program that works where others have failed. And this is a little advertisement for the creators of this infographic. So you might be interested in getting a little bit more information about that program. But basically what I want to tell you about homeschooling is that I think it fits the needs of the individual child. And if you are interested, then I would point you in the direction of, let's see, who would I recommend? I'd recommend you start with AERO, the Alternative Education Resource Organization, who have a collection of resources on homeschooling. I'd recommend you search out the work of John Taylor Gatto, who has done studies on education and curriculums and the history of education. I would recommend you look at the work of Alfie Cohen, who has done studies on self-directed learning and issues such as time spent on subjects and homework. I think one of his books is The Homework Myth, where he talks about how a lot of the time it doesn't actually boost a child's education to spend a lot of time doing that. In fact, it infringes on their personal time. I mean, if school really worked, why would you need to do work outside of that environment? Well, there is the argument that you need to meet the information by yourself alone in your own time to understand it. I get that, but couldn't that be scheduled into school anyway? So there's a question. I hope you found this Why Homeschool presentation interesting. If you've got something that you'd like to add, if there's something that I missed out, if you've got any questions, then feel free to contact me. My name is G, and the home site is www.nsa-slovakia.com. We are a center for educational theory and research. I hope this has been interesting for you, and I wish you a great day. Bye for now.